Rashida. For those who are new to my channel, I'm a nurse and I'm a nursing PhD student at the University of Pennsylvania. And today we're going to be speaking about the COVID-19 vaccine with my special guest, Chioma.
Hi everybody, my name is Chioma and I am a PhD candidate at UPenn. I study health communication and specifically my dissertation research is focusing on vaccine hesitancy among the Black population, focusing particularly on COVID-19 vaccination. So trying to understand what the drivers are of hesitancy and how we can facilitate more confidence in the vaccines coming out.
And you may recognize Chioma because she did an op-ed piece in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and that was on what your research is on, right?
Right, so I was kind of trying to forewarn the impending vaccine hesitancy. This came out in June. And I just from talking with friends and seeing on social media what people's concerns were as vaccine research was going on, I figured that this is an issue that we're going to have to be talking about and have to address when the vaccines become available to the public.
So basically she knows her stuff. So we've been doing Q&As on other platforms. I mentioned to you guys in my live Q&A that I'm not telling anyone whether or not I'm getting it, just because I want you guys to make your own informed decision. I don't want you to say, oh, I hate Rashida, I'm not getting it because she's getting it, or I love her and she says she's not getting it, so I'm not getting it. I want you to make your own informed decision. So I just wanted to bring some of the most common and interesting questions that we got. The first one is that the vaccine is rushed.
Yes, it is rushed. We are in the middle of a global crisis where people are dying by the thousands every day. So, of course, a solution to mitigate the impact and the consequences of this pandemic needs to be expedited. And this does not mean that the research was callous or haphazard. Vaccines have existed for decades, and what is happening here is that we're using decades of research to develop something that needs to be addressed quickly. So of course these are valid concerns to have, but we just simply don't have the luxury of waiting for a prolonged testing period. And a way that the pharmaceutical companies developing the vaccines tried to attenuate these concerns of the time period was by doubling the typical size of a vaccine trial. Normally there are 15,000, but the 6 trials that are going on now have endeavored to at least enroll 30,000 people in their trials. So that is just a measure to try to address people's concerns of, okay, why is this happening so quickly? And that's one way that they have employed to do that. There are things that we do not know about the vaccines in terms of the long-term side effects, if any at all. So these aren't things that people are trying to hide or say that, okay, yes, we know for sure that nothing is going to happen. Rather, there's open communication with these agencies that, hey, we're still in the research process. The monitoring of the vaccine is not going to end just because they're out. It's still going on. It will continue to as we deal with this pandemic.
Yes.
So the second question that has come up a few times was whether COVID-19 vaccines cause Bell's palsy. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys have seen all over social media and on the news that there were individuals who were part of the vaccine trial who developed Bell's palsy. However, one thing that's not usually noted is that at least one of those individuals received the placebo, which is essentially sugar water. So we don't know if the Bell's palsy was caused by the vaccine. However, from the research that's being done, it's less than likely. And something that we should also mention that is common in clinical trials in general is people may not always be as open or honest about their health history, which is common even outside of a clinical trial, right? And think about it this way. If you're a student or you're lower income during a pandemic, let's say, and an impending recession, and someone says, hey, I'll give you, and not saying this happened with the COVID-19 vaccine, but this is just how clinical trials work, period. There's a lot of YouTubers who do clinical trials that you can look up, and they'll tell you, I was a student, I was offered $30,000 to go somewhere, do something, or take a certain medication. They don't know if they get the placebo or the drug, and let's say the trial required that you not be a smoker, right? But you do smoke, and you either lie and get $30,000 or tell the truth and get kicked out of the trial. So we don't know what caused Bell's palsy in these individuals, especially since at least one of them received the placebo, which is sugar water. We don't know their health history. We don't know anything about these individuals. So it's less than likely that the Bell's palsy was caused by the vaccine, per the research. The third interesting question that we got is whether or not we can be tracked after getting the vaccine.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite myths or conspiracies that comes up. We're being tracked with our phones, by our searches. Like, surveillance in the Western world is not a new thing. And if organizations were really that invested in knowing what where we are, what we're buying, and who we talk to, they already have that information. So what we need to ask ourselves, like, what motivation would the government have to even, or whoever have to use this as a way to track us, especially when we already have devices and our use of the internet, and if you connect to public Wi-Fi, there's just so many ways that we are being tracked all the time. So just that is one thing to think about. And as far as I know, to my understanding, I don't know any vaccine technology that, can allow for that, unless people know otherwise. Fourth question that we want to talk about today is that of forced vaccination. So there are concerns that people will be forced to be vaccinated, and if they're not, they would be labeled as combative or non-compliant in some way. So what do you think about that, Rashida?
So we're not forcing anyone to get the vaccine. Even at my job, they sent out an email. It was an anonymous survey, and it said, we're going to order the vaccine for individuals who work here. Please take this anonymous survey and say to let us know that you're interested. That way we know how much to order. So even as a nurse, I'm not being forced to have it. The next question that we got is, if you already had COVID, do you need the vaccine?
Right. So all the research that I've been keeping up with on this is that they do not have a great answer for that. So one thing that is related to that question that people bring up often is whether or not you can have COVID again, if you're safe if you had it the first time. Right now, the data out there is saying that it's possible. And I personally have met people who have said they've had it twice. But again, like, that's anecdotal. I mean, I believe them, but what you should take away from that is, yes, it's very likely that you can. But as far as whether the vaccine protects you if you've already had it is something that the pharma companies cannot conclusively say right now, because I don't know how much of that data they collected before the test started. And think about, the test started in June, I believe, and that was a period when testing was not as widely available. So it's possible that people might have had COVID before enrolling in the study. It's possible they may have not, but I don't think that that data is something that that is consistent enough throughout the clinical trial sample to really say conclusively. So I think that's another thing that really we just have to wait and see with time. So, yeah.
And as a healthcare worker, I can tell you I've definitely had patients who have had it more than once and more than twice.
Thank you for confirming that. I don't work in the hospital in the healthcare setting, so I don't want to say anything that someone comes back to me and say, well, actually, girl.
So. You only get it one time. No, I wish. It's not a one and done. You can get it again. And you don't know how it's going to be the next time too, which is concerning.
So the sixth question we have is whether or not you will get COVID from taking the vaccine.
So long story short, you're not injected with COVID-19 itself. It's the vaccine's supposed to teach your body how to recognize COVID-19. That way it knows to fight it if any trace of it comes in. And the idea is, if you ever come across COVID and you are infected with the virus, then the antibodies will recognize the virus and attack it, and you'll be good. Instead of natural immunity, which occurs from you having the virus and then developing antibodies that way. However, one thing to know about antibodies in that way too is that although some places offer antibody tests, I know people who have gotten COVID and they've gotten the antibody test. It isn't 100% accurate. We haven't developed a good one. And along with that, we also haven't developed a perfect COVID test either. So if you test negative for COVID, that just means there is a 65% chance that you don't have COVID. Unless I did your test, because I am sticking that thing up to your brain. So just know that your COVID test is just only as good as your tester too. So that's something, a side note. So the reason why we decided to do this video is because we've been seeing a lot of misconceptions on the internet, and I wanted to bring Chioma here since this is what her research specializes on, and also to just bring into light to you guys the way that medications in this country are marketed. So what I'm noticing is we started giving the vaccine at my job Monday. People are lining up. There's over 100 people every day getting the vaccine, 100 privileged people getting the vaccine. They're excited, they have their stickers, they're taking selfies, they're taking videos, they're super excited. However, in lower income and Black and brown communities, there's this fear of the vaccine. There is a historical component to this fear, which I completely understand. However, I think that people who are quick to say they're not getting the vaccine are people who aren't going to have access to the vaccine anyway. And feeding people this miseducation, to me, seems like it's so they won't want it, to the point where they don't realize that they don't even have a choice of getting it or not. So that's how I'm looking at it from a health equity standpoint. I would love a world where we all had access to healthcare and it was free, because a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to force us to take it, it's going to be free. I don't know. I know right now, due to the people that are getting it, we are getting it free of cost. However, I don't see this being something that is going to be available to everyone. We have to be honest about the way our society works. Moderna's vaccine just got approved. However, Pfizer's has to be refrigerated and has to be taken care of a certain way, and low-income hospitals and low-income communities aren't going to have the capabilities to do that, to be honest. And then we have to look at the fact this is a pandemic, right? A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people don't have benefits. Even the flu shot, when it says free flu shot, a lot of times in fine print, if you look, it says with the most insurance. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, my research is on more so the health equity side in the Black community. I would love to see everyone be able to have access to the vaccine. Not be forced, of course, to have the choice. However, I don't even think that everyone's going to have access to it.
Also, I'm really invested in these sets of issues because my work intersects with misinformation and how it spreads on social media and what the consequences for that are. And something that I like to remind people of is that when, like, the things you see online are a function of who you're surrounded with. So we're in these echo chambers in our social media platforms that are reflective of the biases within our communities. Not to say that the biases are not valid, like Rashida said, like the contention and like the mistrust that we have of the medical establishment and the research establishment in this country is because of years of exploitation of our people. But when you're looking on your social media, you're scrolling and you're seeing people talking about the same thing, is because people tend to interact with people that they have similarities with. Our social networks look like ourselves, like we're following people that have the same beliefs as us or similar beliefs, have similar concerns. The consequence of that is that misinformation and biases and conspiracies that come up become so amplified because they're repeated so much. So just be conscious of where things are coming from on your social media, why you're seeing it. Just because you're seeing it doesn't mean it's true. We know people can put anything out on the internet, and once it goes viral like that, it's hard to come back from. So yeah, I just really try to encourage people, I guess from a media literacy perspective, just think about what the things that you're exposed to is reflective of the biases that are now compounded into one space. And a lot of the times you're not getting this information from healthcare professionals. And even if you are, those healthcare professionals are also people that are imperfect, that have their own biases. So the fact that people are asking these questions are great, because we're here to try and dispel and debunk the myths, and hopefully allow everyone to get to a level of understanding and to make the right decisions for themselves when you are able to.
Thank you, Chioma, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun to participate in. These issues matter a lot to me, so I try to be engaged as I can. This is my YouTube debut, so this has been a really great experience, and I hope I can continue to help answer these questions and do some myth busting in the future on this.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and tune in next time.